here and start by passing the mic to Crystal and or Spencer to kind of run us through the long and productive discussion and that was had about some tokens over the weekend. Want to just kind of step us through that? Does that work for either of you folks?
Yeah, Spencer, you want to kick it off and then I'll jump in?
Sure, yeah. So I think this is kind of a way of taking one of the main ideas behind JournoDAO as a professional network of journalists exploring Web3 and trying to take that into more of a concrete, kind of tangible, like a way to express it in a more concrete way by having a directory of journalists that are exploring Web3 or that are involved in the JournoDAO network. And we thought that a good way to build up this directory in a way that's kind of something that we could continue to do as this network grows is to have journalists apply to join this directory and then to have their acceptance be voted on by people in the JournoDAO community who may or may not even be journalists, but are at least part of this community. And the votes would be facilitated with non-transferable voter tokens. It's like a V1 kind of iteration of a JournoDAO kind of membership token in a way that would allow you to vote on who gets accepted into this directory. And the main idea, at least for me, the main value of having this directory would be something concrete we can point to when we're talking about JournoDAO as a professional network of journalists. Because right now it's nebulous, it's tough to quantify who's involved and how many people there are. But if we have a directory that we keep adding people to, we can then, as we're talking about JournoDAO and as we're pitching JournoDAO, we can say these are the journalists that are in our network. And it's also seems like a cool way to control who gets added into the network with this kind of community approval. And I think it would be very easy to facilitate this.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of saw when Spencer put that idea out there, I was like, ooh, let's test governance. So the token, just an unlocked token with a time frame, like maybe 3 to 4 months where it expires. So it stays in the person's wallet, but any snapshot vote after that, it won't recognize that token because it won't be active. So we can experiment with governance without committing to a token or committing to any kind of real governance structure, just to rally people into it, see if we can make that conversion. And I figured too, we could use Flocker app as the onboard ramp. So have people come in through Flocker, sign up, and then I guess airdrop them the season token.
And at least my sense of who this body of initial token holders would be, like the token wouldn't have monetary value. It would just be to facilitate these votes and maybe other similar community votes that we can test out this governance. I'd imagine it would be like everyone in this call, and then maybe around like a dozen other people that we think have been active in the community for a while. That's at least the sense of scale I have for the number of people that would be involved at this stage.
Yeah, and even that would probably be a smaller percentage that would actually get all the way through to the snapshot. I mean, even in Unlock, we have a pretty active governance and our snapshot's still pretty small.
Yeah.
So.
And then I guess we would also need to figure out how we go about determining who gets membership tokens, like how that body of people grows as well. Like that could be something that this initial group of people votes on who to give membership tokens to. So that could be a way to kind of bootstrap how all these decisions get made by a community.
Yeah, I mean, once we have the token made, we've got a 3 to 4 month, whatever time frame we decide, and we can roll out other votes for other things just to see what the process is like. So let's see if we like it.
I gotta say real quick, I hadn't really considered having tokens that have like a certain time length. I think that's awesome. And I think that will be great. It will allow us to test things and not be committed to long-term things. And even, you know, I'm not a journalist, so like, even if I don't get one of those things, like it's, that makes sense, but also just this idea that we're not beholden to it way down the line. We can kind of adjust. I think I'd never even considered that. I think that's awesome.
Cool. And everybody can get a voting token. So you don't have to be a journalist to get the voting token. So anybody can hop in. That'll be done through the Flocker thingy.
And I think it's an interesting distinction for me, because at least there would be the body of people that have the member token and all the different, iterations that we may have of that moving forward. And then there's like the journalists that are in the directory that would essentially be JournoDAO sponsored journalists. At least in my mind, that's what adding them to the directory would kind of consist of, although maybe I'm the only one thinking that way. So I guess those would be the kind of two, I don't think they would be distinct membership tiers, but the two different kinds of people that are involved in JournoDAO, at least at this stage. Like general members and then journalists, maybe.
And for the journalists on that list that gets selected, we could also introduce the Journo token if we wanted to. Like say, once the community approves them on the list, then we can distribute X amount of Journo token just to also experiment with that if it's ready.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to have some sort of on-chain distinction between, me who's just like a member versus like somebody who's listed in the directory. So whether that's Journo token or if there's actually like a listing NFT or something like that that's like distinct. I think that would be cool too.
What we could do, so instead of calling it a member token, if we call it a voting token, then towards the end of that voting period, let's say everybody that did 3 votes or that voted every time, then we could give them like a POAP style member token. And then that would be a good way to say, yes, you were active in this governance. Here's the next step. And then if, hash it out after that.
And I also think that the certificate idea for journalists who get added to the directory, I think that's having some on-chain certificate of that, I think makes sense. Like whether that could be another thing we use unlock for, just giving a non-transferable thing, and we can experiment. Like, do we want that to have any kind of expiration or whatever? But I like the idea of having some kind of on-chain certificate that journalists can essentially leverage professionally as like a little reputational piece of capital that they have. I think, and again, I think this is very, very easy to facilitate.
So like mechanically, could it be that you're using the tokens to vote to basically award a journalist an NFT, soul bound or not, and that then you can attach different, basically work the same as ENS, right? Where you're like that NFT goes to that journalist and says that they're JournoDAO endorsed basically, but then different attributes could be certifications, whatever could be added to that over time. Is that like, because I don't know, I don't totally understand how like the different, is that like how Badger works? Or
yeah, I think I think that's a fair way of thinking about it, where the people with the voting tokens, and I agree with Crystal's distinction about not calling those membership tokens per se, at least not right now, but the people with the voting tokens would vote on journalists that get added to the directory, and someone's being added to the directory would also have them getting this kind of non-transferable certificate. So yeah, and it is like a way like you're voting who gets the certificate, and what kind of metadata parameters the certificate has. I think that's something that we can just keep iterating on moving forward. Maybe there's some way to distinguish different kinds of journalists based on metadata for these certificates. But I think like that, what I like so much about this is that we can start in a very simple way and then iterate and add more nuance and sophistication going forward without like overburdening ourselves right away.
And we can also have special channels in the server for journalists that have that validation token. And I saw that, Master, you put the guild in the chat. Guild is integrated with Unlock. So we can use that as a special, key to get into a special channel that then we could lay down the road, offer mentorship or special perks. And then you can layer those NFTs too, even after they expire. So if they've got the voting token and then say they also have that journalist token and then maybe something else down the road, then there's a special perk, like some IRL event or something down the road. So we can continue stacking the incentives based on the different NFTs in people's wallets.
And I also think the mechanism of adding new journalists to this list of just essentially it being a group decision, that like maybe at some point that can be guided or informed by some kind of rubric for what we consider journalism to be. But I think keeping it kind of open-ended and just like a case-by-case decision, like, do we want this person to be added to this directory? Maybe it's good that it's open-ended, but I don't know.
That's, I mean, that's kind of where my mind went when I was reading through the thread, is like, the first question is obviously like what constitutes a journalist. And I think it would be kind of important to keep that barrier to entry actually pretty low, in respect that, I mean, you know, particularly if we're talking about building back up local journalism, like citizen journalism is going to be a pretty big part of that. And so like, I kind of think that like ideally, like as an organization, I mean, it should be, you know, like you said, Crystal, like mentoring should be part of it. Like, I think a lot of people might go to, I'm thinking of like the journalism, like Mastodon servers, where it's like, we need to approve you and see your credentials and like, how many times have you published and for who? Like, I actually think I would want to go the other direction, to like, you know, like literally like everyone, like anyone can be a journalist, and like that's kind of where I'm coming from. So I mean, maybe there's like some differentiation, like you were saying, Spencer, like that could be like, you know, one kind of certificate is like, you know, like you're a journalist who like has been doing this for years, versus like you're like maybe you're like a trainee journalist and we're offering you like mentorship, and that's like part of the directory, and you can like the voting tokens, you can be used, the voting tokens can be used to help you like ascend through the ranks of apprenticeship or something like that. But yeah, like my one bit of input would be to like structure any directory in a way in which it's not just like, here is our list of elite journalists, but more like everyone can play in some way. You know what I mean?
Yes,
When-
that was one question I had, like self-publish versus third-party publish. Like, what would the scenario be in that application? Should it just be all open to anything? Like, you can have just self-published articles linked in that application, or like maybe one third party and then two self-publish, or like any kind of scenario just to show that somebody outside of yourself has published your work, or does that matter?
I mean, I guess ideally we would maybe vote on how that voting process goes, right?
Hmm.
One of the first
I-
votes is to set up those parameters and that criteria.
Yeah. That's a good way to also test our whole premise.
Mhm.
I was also
Let me write that
thinking
down.
it would be an idea to like to earn the certificate, you must write an article for maybe publication. Like maybe you can like build a publication, and then basically the certification is earned through writing articles. Could be a good idea.
I also mean, I see John's had his hand raised, but I've got an idea to follow up on that with.
He's in prison. So
I'll make it quick. I was just thinking, I mean, I don't know technically how this would necessarily work. It would be up to the eggheads in the group, but the idea of I don't know if there would be different certifications or badges that could be awarded to different journalists. Like, I am in JournoDAO, but I'm not a professional journalist. Maybe you could have a professional journalism badge, or I've been vouched by some of the JournoDAO journalists, or I've been mentored, or I've, you know, I think there might be ways to distinguish the different levels, you know, without, because yeah, I would totally agree. Like, totally, let's make it accessible to a lot of people for sure that want to be involved, that maybe haven't had the privilege of getting mentored and that sort of thing. So, but if there was maybe some way to denote that in a way that people would know, like, okay, this is a JournoDAO person, we have vouched for them, we think that they have good intent, or whatever that would be. I think that there might be some great utility with something like that.
Yeah, and to go back to the original like professional network idea, maybe it's as simple as like the people who apply are really just people who are looking for work in fields of journalism, and like we don't make any sort of claim on like qualifications, but like these are the people who you know, want to be listed under JournoDAO as like, you know, journalists for hire, journalists in the space, something like that. So we did originally talk about like a job board and all that stuff as like a revenue generator.
I think one way to keep it, 'cause I totally agree with keeping it accessible, and having like the base kind of fundamental journalist kind of certificate be as inclusive as possible, and then we can pile on all these other additional certificates and kind of reputational things. Maybe one mechanism we could explore is having the actual DAO get some monthly allotment of Journo token and then voting on who in the directory to give it to. And that could be one way of recognizing like this is someone who's putting out good work or is doing, you know, some kind of important work while still keeping the whole thing inclusive.
I think it's actually kind of a risk, like if everyone is just like admitted, or if the barrier is so low, because like the cool thing of having a certificate, I think like it's something that gives you authority. So like you have this certificate and you can say, okay, I've earned this. It could be an idea to explore, to like run batches, maybe like, I don't know, maybe every month there is like one certificate. 1 month maybe is too much, but yeah, maybe every week there is like one certificate given, and you like maybe can submit one article, and the DAO reads the articles and maybe can decide on the best ones, and you get a certificate based on that. Like it's not based on previous accomplishments, but it's based more on the current ability of like writing, which I think makes more sense to like evaluate someone on, like, rather than their past accomplishments.
Would it, what do you think about the idea of having someone's inclusion in the directory, that being its own kind of certificate, but then there could potentially be a more exclusive one that's more explicitly about JournoDAO endorsing that particular journalist, and I can just pile on top of just the minimum kind of inclusive, this is a journalist in the directory, but being in the directory doesn't necessarily mean that JournoDAO is endorsing them. Like, is that a distinction worth exploring?
I don't know. I think like it would be cooler if it was like something really exclusive, but it's not like something like exclusive in a sense that you have like you have publications here and there, but it's something like I've earned this. Like maybe we can have like entire communities of people just writing, oh, how did you write that article? Like what were the things you had to do? What's the style which like it's most appreciated by the JournoDAO communities, or like of voting members. Like it could be something that begins to be like very sought after and becomes like something, yeah, something where people just like want to get that piece of certificate and like strive for that and like just write their asses off to get the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with this, and this is something that we're experimenting with in PubDAO, where the 3 writers that contributed to the little essay series we put together all got a badge indicating that they were like an author in this thing, and it's non-transferable, and it's trivially easy to do that too. So I think we can at least in my mind, we could end up in a situation where there's dozens or hundreds of different badges, because at least the tools I'm familiar with makes it trivially easy to issue these, to revoke them, to manage them, to update them. And it's at least badgers on Polygon. I think Crystal said that Unlock can operate on Polygon or some other ones as well. So it's not like gas fees are a real issue.
Yeah, Unlock's mostly on Polygon, also Optimism. So, basically the getting on the directory is kind of the base level. And then you've got the JournoDAO token, which could also boost up endorsement and get it to that rarity, put up the leaderboard. The JournoDAO token is only granted by those who see that, in case y'all aren't familiar. Now you buy the JournoDAO token or the Journo token and then award it to journalists. And that will help boost you up in credibility. Then you can also incorporate the educational programs that we're talking about. So then you have that certificate program that runs through that. I've been to 3 of Keith's webinars on this topic, that topic, and then I've done this over here on this topic that's more advanced. So then you begin stacking those certifications also at the same time as you're stacking that community validation to the Journo token. The base entry level is that getting on the list itself. Is that kind of the summary?
I totally like that way of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of being more like modular or atomizing about it is just that allows different certifications to like emerge naturally rather than trying to like prescribe that this is what this one thing means. It's like, oh, this person did this many things, this person did slightly different things, and then we don't have to put a label on like what this person's credentials are versus this one. It's just kind of like the sum of the parts is like, oh, they have access to this channel but not to this channel, and if they want access to this channel then they need to like jump through these hoops, but it's like very like scoped down to like that particular thing, like just a symbol that I did this.
And over
So, like-
time, what just popped into my brain right there, Keith, while you're talking, is that we could also have channels where editors and publications can come in to these specific channels. Like, let's say one of the journalists that's gone through all this process goes through a course that Nick offers on blockchain analytics. And then an editor or a publication that needs a Web3 journalist that knows this information can then pay to access that channel where 10 to 15 of them are communicating every day as they go through the process of learning and doing this type of journalism. So that's down the road, but then you could also offer paid access for that publication itself to have access to this special class of journalists that have trained a certain way.
So like, how could this work with, Spencer's been talking with the people from Footprints, and we're on a thread there, and there's an NFT analytics session on, I think, January 30th, right, Spencer?
Yeah,
like-
yeah. This is going to be an opportunity to experiment with like an on-chain, non-transferable certificate for attending this workshop. Because we don't want to overcomplicate things. It's going to be pretty passive. Like you'll get this if we see that you were there for the whole workshop. And it's not like there's going to be some kind of quiz or some kind of really more interactive or active way of earning this, but it's kind of just like an occasion to experiment with this kind of certificate. And yeah, so like the idea is that someone would attend this workshop, and then if we're doing it in a channel where their wallet address isn't attached or something, we'll just ask them to share their wallet address. We'll figure out how to associate attendees with their wallet addresses, but then we'll just airdrop them a non-transferable token. In our case, we'd be using Badger. But in certain situations, maybe Unlock could be better. It seems like they both kind of suffice for a lot of these things. But at least for how this one could work, Badger does let you put in all these custom metadata parameters. So we could, and I think you can revise them too using Badger. So it's not like once you airdrop it, it's like it's fixed the way it is. We can have all of these metadata parameters. So like instructor of course or whatever it is. And as we move forward and as we start issuing more and more certificates, we can get a better sense of what information we need to standardize and how that can be expressed through metadata. But this is something that would just sit in someone's wallet, and using stuff like Guild, just by virtue of it being in their wallet, if they've connected their wallet, they'll get access to other channels. And also Guild lets you get a CSV of everyone with a certain role. So that's also very easy for airdropping tokens to people who have a certain role. So like using these tools in conjunction, it's very easy to screen who has certain tokens, then give certain roles to certain people, and then give tokens to people with certain roles. So like it's kind of like a toolkit or like a vocabulary for using all this stuff. But yeah, like the analytics thing, we're going to give out a certificate for just attending it, and then that's something that we can revise moving forward if we get a better sense of what information we'd like to standardize in these certificates.
Hey, Glenn, welcome. We're just talking about setting up a
Hey,
a directory and a system of voting for folks to be part of a JournoDAO directory of journalists and other folks working in Web3 and you know, different possibilities for that. So yeah, I wonder, like, retroactively, like, you know, assuming this directory is not likely to be set up by the time that that analytics workshop happens. So is there like, could there be like a retroactive way to, like, in the directory, like, go back and search and say, oh yes, this person has the badge or certificate from that NFT analytics workshop, and we want to highlight that.
yeah, I mean, I think that's even if we do it where the certificate is given out before we have the directory, like it'll still like the on-chain presence will still be there. So like the order of getting some kind of directory inclusion badge, even if you get that after this workshop attendance badge, we can still use both of those. Like it doesn't really seem order dependent in this case, at least to me. In that case, like if someone gets the workshop certificate first and then they join the directory, they'll just be joining the directory with a bit more like reputational capital than someone who didn't have the certificate.
And that allows us to do more cross-pollination with other groups. So we can also have channels in our server through Guild that say, all right, you've got this Journo token here, you've got this one from PubDAO, this one from this other course. Yes, you get access to this server channel now. So it'll just scan, you just give it the token address of whatever NFT you want it to scan and it'll scan it.
Oh, and I'm so impressed by Guild. I maybe in this call or some other point I can do a screen share for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it is really cool because you can not only set requirements for like wallet contents for who gets a certain role, but you can set up multiple requirements and then configure them into this full-on logic, like logical operations. So you can say if you want to give a certain role, if you want to assign a certain role, you can set up like this person needs to either have token A or token B or tokens C and D or tokens E, and just like I don't know what the upper bound there is, but in principle you could have like a Discord channel that's gated to people that have one of some like 24 different certificates. You know, it's really amazing what you can do with all this.
And the
Cool.
builders are super nice. Like they use a grant from Unlock to build that partially.
Wow.
So I watched them give their first demo and they're super nice. They're based out of Europe. So if we need anything specific, we can just hop over there and ask them.
Yeah, so I'm actually working pretty closely with both Rick and Raz on what we're doing with Meme. So right now those roles live on Guild servers, right? And so the piece that we're working on is syncing this back to a community agreement that the community actually has their own smart contract that you can effectively have subcontracts that are roles that are then token enabled. And those token enabled, by the way, we're now going to abstract all the crypto away using Magic Link and Lit PKP and everything else. So you don't even need to know that you don't have to onboard folks into wallets anymore to do this stuff, right? So anybody can be holding these tokens in wallets that they effectively hold a shard of a private key that actually still lets them be the custodian of that wallet that holds that token, that then unlocks whatever rights and responsibilities. And like what we're doing with Meme is allowing that to integrate with Guild for things like Discord, but then you can integrate it with anywhere across the ecosystem. So that set of roles that you've set and start building tools for communities, like effectively extensions in any way you want for the community. So I love what they're doing, and like they're continuing to integrate on the Web 2 side, and then we're thinking about how to extend this across letting communities build their own stuff effectively. So yeah, that's definitely a really good way to go. And then happy to start filling in gaps on the other side where I think we're pretty close to being able to build some really cool journalism tools with some other folks too that I can tell you more about. But anyways.
Well, it'd be really great to see that kind of functionality and gating also be able to apply then to editorial roles down the road, so that maybe your role that you earned through this process doesn't just get you access to a Discord channel, but it also gives you permissions to press publish on the Mirror account or paragraph or whatever it is, or to have like editorial privilege.
So
I think you can do that already in Paragraph. I think it might It's
can
very
do-
close.
New in a paragraph, and that like paragraph again, like those roles are in column servers, right? So like that's the piece that we can start integrating across these things. So you can set these in one place and have them work all over the place. But where we're starting to experiment with, and we'll have this, one of the first dApps at is, have you guys watched what MetaLabel did with Chorus? You guys seen this, where it effectively lets Discord servers tweet together. And so it's a really simple bot that you can post into a channel. It's like a 200 line bit of code that is pretty simple, but it's like in a given channel, say, anybody who can post in that channel can propose that something goes out on Twitter, and then anybody has access to that channel then can emoji vote. And once you hit a certain threshold of that emoji vote, it'll actually tweet for the DAO or for the community, right? So it's a way for that community to do it. So there's a group of folks called the Common Sense Makers that are deep in this kind of Stigmergy open source attention protocol. Like, how do we start doing platformless management of we have human communities that, like, it doesn't matter if you're in Discord or Slack or Twitter or whatnot, you can decide how that community decides those marks are meaningful for them, and not be confined to a platform. So that's what they're working on. So they've been building this thing called Stig flows to help kind of manage these tools. And so within the next couple of weeks, we should have a version of this that then runs off of those same roles. So you can say, hey, you have an editorial role, you're allowed to propose, these folks have veto rights. And what's nice is that this is all open source, it's all extendable. And so as you think about what are the tools that any given community wants for how that works, like, it's really, really easy to just fork the thing and create your own version, or create other things that can go into, so there's just like, there's a ton of stuff here that I think is about to come out that will be like really valuable for doing this kind of work together, both in terms of curating things into communities, as well as to, like, how do you want to collaboratively publish out of those communities in all types of forms. It's getting pretty close.
This chorus bot is incredible. I just found the link and posted it in the chat there, but wow.
Yeah, it's like amazing MVP that's out there. Lots of folks are using it, but it's really simple. It's, this is effectively, how do you extend this and start, because when you start there, then how do you get it so you can post to any channel you want? If you can start posting to Twitter or ActivityPub or Lens or Farcast or what have you, if you can start taking in from Discord and Slack and Twitter or whatever else, and decide how it is you want any of those marks to be meaningful, and you can start abstracting out there, and then you can do the same thing with songs and Spotify libraries, or any, like, there's lots of things you can start kind of layering onto the same structure. And same can be true for things like Paragraph or newsletters or others, in terms of what are the ways you want to manage what bits of media together as a community, using these same kind of logic flows. I think is almost there.
That's pretty exciting. It's all happening. Slowly.
Totally. Like, it's real. I don't know. It seems like a bunch of the dreams and fanciful ideas are starting to really come to fruition. It's super exciting hearing just this little instance of updates and stuff. For whatever reason, I don't know, it just seems way more accessible, and it's super exciting.
And I think, like, one of the best parts for me is that it's getting this started seems very easy. I mean, Crystal, I think you've already made the form for journalists to apply to join the directory.
I made the Google form. I did the NFT artwork, uploaded it to IPFS. The only thing left is just through the JournoDAO wallet is to create the NFT and unlock. And then, Eric, I put that in the Notion, the steps that are necessary. And then in there, I think I need to add in to make sure it's the soulbound token. So I'll send you a screenshot. It's just like one little switch when you set it up, and you can also do it retroactively.
And then I got the voting token. I'm sorry. Yeah,
this is the voting token. And then you wrote the blog post, Spencer. That's already drafted into the website. So, I mean, it's pretty much ready to roll.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the form you made, that could feed into a spreadsheet of applicants, and then those who we approve, we would just lift into a different spreadsheet, I guess, if we wanted to display it as a spreadsheet, or if you think there's a better way to display the directory, that's something we can just iterate as we go on, right?
Yeah, you would just want that as a reference point for the snapshot vote. So in the snapshot vote, you just have the individuals listed, and then you'd probably have the spreadsheet so people could go and look at the work they submitted for review.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, so everyone voting would be able to access the spreadsheet of applicants and like click on their portfolio links or any other resources.
Yeah, you just put it in the snapshot copy for the vote.
And then do you think that the approved directory, at least for the time being, would also just be like a Google Sheets thing, or do you think there's a better way to display that?
I have to think about that. I think Google Sheets works.
Yeah, that's what we're doing in PubDAO. I think
Yeah.
and maybe eventually there'll be some Web3 version of it that we can use that has that can like connect, that can like display their badges or whatever.
Yeah. The only thing that just popped in my brain I need to think about is I've had too much coffee, so my brain's like, wee.
Yeah, same thing.
So it's a snapshot vote, but there's no smart contract transaction to happen once the vote is done, which I think is fine. I think then just manually we go in and airdrop the NFTs to the ones that are voted.
Yeah, I think making it fully automated is something that we can iterate towards, but at this point,
Yeah.
it seems like it's easy. We could just do it manually, just
Yeah.
to get it started.
Yeah, so it's pretty much, I mean, maybe like another couple hours of bits and bobbles, and then it'll be ready.
Can we do those last bits and bobbles on like a gather night, or come back
Ooh,
and record it? Would you we just walk through all the steps?
we can definitely do it on a gather, and then just because you can screen share in there, like we can gather and then poker afterwards. Play some poker since we're all there. Yeah. But yeah, we could, as long as you can screen share, we can just walk through.
I mean, I think it would be a big flex if we did both at the same time.
Mm. That would be legit.
Crystal's just like killing us on she's coding everything, but then also just dropping and winning all the pots and everything.
Yeah, there's no code happening right here. No, but I do think that poker should be part of our governance at some point. I really do think that we should gather and vote on. It could be even just be like, what is the color of the next thing we create, and we should vote via poker, and winner takes all.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, I bet it does.
I think that's the only reason Keith is allowed to be here, is because I had a really bad night of poker and I lost like several times in a row, and now I'm indentured to him.
I like that this is a long con for like
Yeah.
this whole thing was just setting up for to take you.
I mean, you got money laundering in crypto, you got poker. I mean, gambling. Why not?
We're just
Lean
trying to
in.
stay true to the crypto roots. I guess.
Exactly. Lead in.
Which reminds me, I wanted to talk to you all about an opportunity for a timeshare in Puerto Vallarta. Just turn on the screen share.
Ooh, tokenized ownership. I think I've heard these.
Let me know where
As
to
long-
send the money. I'm ready to go.
As long as there's a luxury bathroom, then Keith's in.
Yeah.
That's all he needs.
Or even the promise of one. I mean, I know it's probably vaporware, but
Different kind of vaporware. Well, that's all super exciting. Thank you, everyone for jamming on that through the weekend. While I was, relaxing and not paying attention to anything. That was it was by far like in that thread that was like literally, I think it was like 150 messages like came back to us in 4 days. So very cool.
Most of that happened on Monday too. That was just like a vomiting all over the Discord on Monday. So I think.
Super exciting. Cool. Let's ship it.
Do we also
well-
want to? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say there's the other thing I wanted to touch on was the Verbo rental for ETH Denver.
Yeah, it was
I've
just
never.
yeah. If there's nothing, we can plan to pick up the token in Gather and talk about ETH Denver.
Yeah, 'cause the idea was that we would get this and then get that rental, and then we could. I would propose to Lobby 3 that one of those nights we can have like a decentralized civics kind of event there, and then we can get a few $1,000s from lobby 3 to help cover the cost. But like the one hang up for me was just booking it was like for 11 people for 10 days was like $6,000. I don't know how to move forward with that and facilitating a bunch of people that are still kind of half committed to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just speak for myself. Like, I have a place to stay. I think ideally I would like to stay with you all, but also like I'm a broke single dad. And so it's hard for me to turn down a really nice spot for free. But at the same time, like, so it kind of just depends on like how much it would cost and those sorts of things. But like, I would like to, but at the same time, I don't want to really commit, you know, depending on what the price ends up.
I mean, in any case, you'd be able to come hang out anyway, so it doesn't really.
I mean, I could sit outside and kind of just look through the window.
It's going to be NFT gated.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you don't have tokenized access.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as John, so I'll be a last minute straggler, and I'm also gonna have to study and probably work during that week, so I might just need like old person quiet pod somewhere. But I will definitely be in and out and hanging out. But yeah, so.
Yeah, and I'm kind of number 3 in that boat too. Like I have a lot of family and friends. I actually would have a place to stay probably within a couple of blocks of the Wheat Ridge one for free. So, but like, yeah, the price on that one would be like significantly easier for me to do than the other one. But like I was saying offline, like, yeah, I don't know how Lobby 3 would feel about having their civics event like on probably like a suburban cul-de-sac.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of moving pieces there. I'm not super confident that it'll come together, but it would be cool if it does.
Is there any chance like we could do something like, well, because like I can do video stuff, streaming stuff, we could be like, hey, we'll do this event, we'll do these things if you guys, you know, take care of whatever price for, you know, renting a space or something. Like, I would be more than happy to try to offer whatever insanity I could provide to something like that, if there was any, like, you know, if that would maybe sugar it a little better for some money being sent our way.
Yeah, I mean, there could be opportunities like that for the actual event if we wanted to record some of the event or have some video component for the event. Like a lot of the stuff was just suggested by someone else in Lobby 3 like yesterday about this idea for having a Lobby 3 event in order to get them to essentially subsidize our rental to some extent. But again, there's a lot of moving pieces, and it seems like these places are getting booked pretty quickly. So I don't know ultimately.
Well, I would just say, like, maybe throw that their way, that at least, you know, depending on circumstances, I will be there, and I would certainly, because I'll be flying, but I could potentially get some access to some gear. The person I'm staying with shoots video and stuff, and so there's some options potentially. So if that would maybe lean them in one direction or another, maybe just throw that out, and then we could always talk about details, you know, specific.
And it also may be easier because the guy in Lobby 3 who suggested this also suggested that we book it through the duration of Biddle Week as well, that other kind of week before the main event for ETH Denver. And I think that's what just knocked the price for booking the whole thing way up. So if we do just do it for the core event, that would seem a lot more financially manageable to actually book that and move forward, and then maybe he or anyone else that wants to stay for Biddle Week would just have a different place. I can float that idea past him as well.
Yeah, I think I mean, in my mind, the thought was people are already going to be looking for accommodations at like, I don't know, 200 plus a night. And then if we get enough people to bring like the collective individual cost to 200 or below at a house, then like it's a no-brainer. So it's not necessarily like people who have a free place come give us money to stay here or something. It's more like, let's try and find the people who haven't booked a spot yet, but otherwise we'd probably just get a hotel and then, you know, make a better offer. And then I think if we can get a place with like enough space, but like we only need this many people to commit in order to like make the purchase, then I'm sure more people can be added, and that'll drive everybody's price down, like as more people sign on. So
yeah. And if we, for this latest suggestion, if we get 11 people, it would be a little under $100 per person per night before any question of lobby 3 paying for some of it. So I think if we get 11 people for it, it could be pretty affordable. It's just like the upfront thing of booking like 10 days there for 11 people.
mhm.
It was like the first half of that was like $7,000. Like I don't have a card that I can even, you know, do that for.
Are there any unlock tools that would allow us to all pool the money together and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, we need Verbo to get their Web3 integrations together.
I think if we focus on just the March 2nd through March 6th, and then forget about middle week, then we can yeah, let's just do that, because I can't come for the hackathon. I don't know a lot of people who can, but
Yeah.
I do know like several people. Like, let's see, we've got like pretty hard commitments from 3 people at Factland, like the other co-founders, 3 people from Gather, not the meeting software, but my new part-time gig. And so that's 7 without any of you all. And then yeah, so I think we can easily get to like 11, and then just put it on somebody's card, get the contributions, and then figure out the rest later. I think we just want to get as much, the biggest place that we can for like, you know, like that $100 to $200 per night rate.
Yeah.
Because then we can add more and more people and make it more of like a hangout zone.
Do we think we can add the fact line and the other Gather people to that spreadsheet?
Yeah, totally. I just haven't done it yet, but I'll do that.
Yeah, and then I think there's 3 other people that are willing to do this with us, but like no promises have been made there. So I guess like Factland and Gather, you mentioned them first, so they can jump on this, and then anyone else can also just come hang out here anyway, and if they're not staying there.
The other thing that might go into this is, so I did submit the application for JournoDAO to do a panel during East Denver, and that could and probably will, if I had to guess, fall during Biddle Week. My talk last year did. Mine was pretty early on, actually. So, you know, kind of depending on what else they have planned, and you know, who wants to participate in that, that's just something else. So that could actually be in February.
Cool. I'll be around. I mean, I can, I've got classes, but I can skip a few. So I was going to commute for Biddle Week.
Cool. And the Shelling Point is the night of March 2nd, which is the Thursday, kind of the opening night. And I was going to put in an application for that as well.
Yeah, Shelling Point would be great. Yeah.
That one actually, I think, is where more of like our people might be.
Mm-hmm. I got so much out of Shelling Point last year, like more than I did from them. Well, I couldn't even get into the main event half the time because the line was like 5 hours. But Shelling Point was really, the talks were pretty amazing.
Glenn, Dario, Moscow, Miles, or which of you folks are planning to go to Denver this year?
I don't think I will be going to Denver.
It's a bit of a trip.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm probably, this is Miles. I'm probably going to Dow Planet's event that is the weekend that starts the pre. I think that's right. 3 days. No, that's not true. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Yeah.
Literally. And then I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to do anything more. But we'll see. That probably starts, that's probably 3 days that are not overlapping JournoDAO stuff. Is that right? Like,
Right, most likely.
the first JournoDAO event would be when? The first JournoDAO focus, the things we would want to pay attention to at East Thunder. Let's start when.
I mean, we haven't scheduled anything yet, and we basically just applied for speaking slots, and then Spencer is talking about a lobby 3 event where we might be on the side handing out drinks or something.
Right, but that would likely be what the.
I don't know. Do you know, Spencer, when like a lobby 3 thing would likely take place?
If we do just shorten this to the core event, the time of the core event, it would probably just be I don't know what the time frame is for the actual events, but ideally outside of that window, if that's not too late or too early. But just one day at some point in the core week, no dates have been solidified yet, and like we haven't started on any kind of proposal for lobby 3 getting some money for that. It's an option, and it's something that seems feasible. We would just have to go through a proposal process for like a week-long proposal process to get this done. So but it seems like an option. We just need to nail down some other details first.
So to clear that up for you, Miles, we have no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
That's definitive.
Our whole team's going to be there the week of the 27th, effectively, just like that Monday through Friday, I think is where we're going to be around. It's kind of end of middle week and then peace, and then seemed a reasonable target. But I think we're in the same boat of everyone's trying to figure out when things are happening and looking at everybody else thinking about when things are happening.
When we say the whole team, that's meme.
Yeah, our meme team. I think there's a bunch of folks setting up from Colonel and other folks that are going to be around roughly the same time too.
And would we think that this maybe a day in association with lobby would be at the main venue or where?
I mean, the idea was just to use the apartment just to have a few people over and talk about decentralized civics and this project that Lobby 3 is doing, and that would just be like a one-day event, like a side unofficial event.
Side of it. Okay. Well, then that comes to mind, which is Dow Planet will be soon offering housing package that includes their 3 days of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I think venue. I mean, that's something we should look at.
Is there a location lockdown, a venue lockdown yet, Miles?
Just ask, well, there's a likely venue. And it's fairly close to the main venue, I think. And then the housing is, I think it's a package with a hotel. So there might be, but it's not as cool as a house together. It might be with their housing package, even cheaper. And then we all are just in the same hotel with people coming and going as they need. And it'd be easy to do this kind of gathering we're talking about in the either hotel or the Dow Planet space, which I understand is a pretty great, not a club, but more of a event meeting space. I don't want to name the venue because they haven't locked it down yet. I've asked to be confidential about. So this
Got
will
it.
take shape in the next couple of days. And so it's another option to put forward.
I will keep an eye on the appropriate channels. Is there, Spencer, is there any kind of, I don't know, a time frame that like lobby 3 is hoping to have something concrete? It sounds like it's just getting in the proposal stage.
Yeah, I mean, I just touched base with the other guy about just shortening this to the core event. He said that makes sense. So I think we'll make sure everyone's on the same page, but I think we can move forward with booking that one, the 11-person one in downtown for just the core event. And then if like that should be a lot less money than the 10-day thing, but we could still possibly get some amount of money from lobby 3, which would save everyone money in terms of booking this. But yeah, and like lobby 3 has a fund of money that we need to make proposals for, and there's a week-long proposal process. And then we also have a kind of like an emergency fund where we don't have to bother with proposals. So if we do need this, and for some reason the proposal process is presenting difficulties, we could just take a couple thousand from the other fund. But I think that could be cool if we wanted to have one day, one evening, have an event that's just kind of centered around the project that lobby 3 is working on now. And it would save everyone money, at least that's my understanding.
Sounds good. Yeah, I guess keep us posted as that moves forward. And Keith, you're definitely making the trip. Are you like 100% in? Sounds like it.
Yeah, everything except I haven't actually got the plane ticket, so but
Yeah, same. Yeah, I'm about to do the plane ticket as well.
Okay. Cool. Sounds good.
What would be the dates that we're talking about here for the house?
Let's see. I think it would be the night of the 2nd through the night of the 6th, I believe.
That's the core event only, not the little week.
Right.
I'm checking to see what the cancellation policy is.
Cool. Well, with the time that we have left, I got about 20.
Let me
minutes
just
myself.
let you know that their cancellation policy doesn't allow us to book it now. For already we're past whatever the cancellation window is. I was looking at that because if their cancellation policy was loose, I'd just grab it for us and figure it out later, pass it on to somebody.
Okay.
But it doesn't fit with people. But I might still be available as a resource to just reserve it before it goes to somebody else, if we're confident that somehow it's going to get I'm going to get reimbursed. Or if you and I can talk about it.
What was that last part?
You and I can talk a little more detail about that later. My history.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Thanks for the potential option there, Miles.
But Miles, you said that you would be like, if this is booked, you would be you'd be willing to commit to stay for the 2nd through the 6th.
I gotta check costs because I don't know that I would be. I think I think time would be too much time for me. I have to come to the JournoDAO planning event. I don't know. I'm gonna take a look at it. And even if I'm not going to be there, I'm still offering that I might be able to do the one who puts it on critical.
Okay.
Depending on time.
Yeah, and anyone who isn't staying can still just come hang out, whether it's for the event that may or may not happen, or just to drink, I guess.
Could you restate the thing that Crystal and you all, three of you went to that was as worthwhile as or better than the main event when you couldn't get into the main event? I couldn't hear what you were referring to.
I was just referencing Shelling Point. So it's usually the day before the main event. I can't remember the exact dates this year. And
Did
they
you
have
say
a
that- Is it Shelling? Like,
Shelling. Yep, like a
Spell that.
Shelling Point.
I don't know that you.
Basically it's like where, you know, you start with like a small point and then everything goes out from there. So a lot of the ideas, a lot of the talks are high level conceptual. Like Vitalik opened up the event last year, and then all the speakers after him were really good, you know, high level, what is the implication of this technology a few years down the road, and like really complex topics. But then there was also a lot of amazing like community building and just really, really good topics. And there weren't as many people there, so it was easier to access. The main event last year was so crowded. If you didn't get there like at, I don't know what, 8 a.m., you weren't getting out and the bathrooms broke. So if you had to leave to use the bathroom, you couldn't get back in. It's like, what? So.
Well, that sounds.
Put on by Gitcoin, so the focus is generally on public goods.
Yeah.
So there's yeah, it's a really yeah, I think this is a good fit for this organization.
Mm-hmm.
I put the link in the chat, Miles, and I had no idea what a Shelling Point was a year ago either. And it's yeah, like Glenn said, it's more focused on public goods type stuff. I think it was started by the Gitcoin people. Yeah, maybe a little more nonprofit or oriented.
And the concept of the Shelling Point is also that, like, by having a point at which we aggregate, we give others a point to aggregate in the same way. So it's kind of which is kind of how I think of the Ethereum community. It's less about the technology and it's more about who are the people that are building on Ethereum, are the people that you want to work with, and so then it kind of self-fulfills.
Just a quick clarifying thing. Did we want to stay the night of the 6th? Or no, I don't know if there are any events on the 6th. I see the core thing is through the 5th.
People hang around because a lot of people then go up to go skiing the following week. So I mean, it's up to the individual, obviously, but like there will still be people around and things kind of going on.
Okay.
Depends on how much you want to party the night, that Friday night. Like, how hungover do you think you're going to be, and can you get on a plane the next day? That's kind of like
It's the
I would
Wayne
think.
game, yeah.
Yeah, it's logical. Although y'all are pros, so you can probably fly hungover. I just have to drive up the road. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we do the night of the 2nd through the night of the 6th, that's pretty affordable, I think. I could just do some tallying.
Are you looking at the downtown one, the same one?
Yeah, the one for 11 people in the downtown one. So that would be.
And if things go my way on the job hunt, then what I might try to do is get a place where near you guys that's smaller and overflow. So if somebody needs an extra bedroom, they can crash too. But that will be last minute too, and out of my control. So.
Yeah, and at this, just did the tallying, it would, if we do the 11 people one for that time frame, it would be under $100 per night per person, maybe even under $90. So that seems pretty good for 11 people if we have 11 people per night. And it seems like we can get together 11 people.
Anybody know can tell me how to save chat in Zoom? I know you can. I just don't remember what it is.
It sends the transcript to me, so I can send that around.
There is a in the chat section, there's some buttons at the bottom next to the emoji one. There's a ... and then save chat should be an option there, and saves it as a
There it
text.
is. No, is it? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, there it
Thank
is.
you.
Yeah.
Cool. Is Shelling Point named after somebody? Where does the word Shelling come from?
It's not a philosopher, or is it someone else?
I'll look it up later.
It's like a game
Yeah.
theory thing, so.
Yeah.
Thomas Schelling, there it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like this is this Verbo arrangement here seems much easier to act on than the 10-day booking.
And I suspect that if you get it for the main event, it won't get booked for before that.
Right.
Once you've got the main event, you can probably expand it to longer if there's interest,
Okay.
right? Because the competition will be less. Who the hell wants to book a fancy house and then have to leave?
Yeah, that's a good point. It could just be 2 separate bookings if we do decide to extend it.
And then you have to be 2 separate. They'll allow you to
Oh, okay.
change your booking usually. Once you've got it, if the dates are available, you usually can just change your dates.
Are we getting Andrew Yang out to Denver or no?
I don't think he's showing up to this one. But we may get him to show up on this podcast. We just agreed to sponsor that this guy Jacob Robinson hosts, Law of Code. He's going to be doing some new monthly DAO centric podcast, and we may get Andrew Yang to jump on that. But yeah, like for the most part, that's kind of just beyond our reach. Usually the other Lobby 3 core member, Saul Thorin, is like works with Humanity Forward and has a closer rapport with Yang and his team. I only just met him once. So
Yeah, there's a lot of regulatory stuff hopping right now. SEC and Gemini and all that. Should be interesting.
the twins.
Spencer, could you give a very short 1-sentence who is Lobby 3 and is it a DAO?
Yeah, it's a DAO. We're actually going through the process of rebuilding it now, but it's like a DAO trying to use this technology to lobby on behalf of the technology and use the technology to change how lobbying is done. And we're at the planning phase for a petitioning protocol. And Glenn and I have talked about this too, because it seems like it overlaps with a lot of the stuff in the folk-oriented protocols that you're working on. But yeah, the idea is that we wanted to make an open source protocol that people could fork and everything, but that would essentially allow you to write messages in the spirit of petitions and then have readers sign their support by connecting their wallet and kind of imprinting their wallet address on it. And then we'd like to build it out so that there's a crowdfunding element so that you can donate to this message, this petition, and kind of turn it into more of a movement. And then there would kind of be like a provisional kind of DAO around that message. And so we're gearing up to start developing this this protocol, and that's probably going to be the next proposal for within Lobby 3. We're going to be setting aside a chunk of money to put out a request for proposals from developers to start get this going. But yeah, that's what Lobby 3 is up to.
And once lobbying is underway, is there like any framework or guidance or tone or like any cause that someone wants to lobby for?
Yeah, I mean, we'd like it to be as permissionless as possible, but if for the lobbying that Lobby 3 is actually going to be doing, like we're going through the process of setting up an unincorporated nonprofit association and then going for 501c4 status so that we can actually pay lobbyists to start lobbying on stuff. And the idea is that Lobby 3 can kind of, as a centralized entity, and it won't really be in the spirit of a DAO because of all these constraints for lobbying. But Lobby 3 could kind of endorse certain messages and then pay lobbyists to lobby on behalf of this kind of crowdsourced message and crowdfunded message. And we're thinking, depending on all the constraints and everything, part of the funds from the donor pool for a message can go towards paying lobbyists to advocate on behalf of it. But yeah, it's just a bunch of experimental stuff that we're going to be starting.
But is it like, if it's developed, is it a tool that conservatives could use just as easily as liberals, or like no political framing, it's whoever.
Oh, yeah, like it doesn't need to be like political in nature. It's something like we'd like it to be any kind of like a petitioning protocol. Doesn't have to be political in nature. It could be something where I mean, like any kind of arbitrary message that you'd like to create that you think other people would sign or donate to in some respect. I mean, like we're creating it with an intended emphasis on like advocacy and political related stuff. But that's not like we'd like it to be more generalized than that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think actually what might be interesting to this group too is that this tech that we're working on for the petition is really exciting from like a decentralized media perspective. And so Kyle, who we're working with closely on this and is a good friend, like he's essentially built HTML into an NFT. And so like we've been working on this idea of signature economies as to how, as folks make their marks on a piece of media, how to incorporate that into the media. And this is oriented around this idea of called signature economies from kernel. So if you guys haven't seen it, it's a lot of this is trying to reframe Web3 away from this ownership narrative that Andreessen Horowitz has been pushing so hard. This kind of read, write, own is, let's define everything as property rights effectively, when we can think really differently about the ways that we manage relationships digitally. And so that's kind of where Kyle and I have been working on folk stuff together, is like, what are the different ways we can think about these media relationships and copyright and other things. And so an entry point that we're playing with there is more song covers, which has these compulsory mechanical licenses that we're playing with. So that's going to be part of how we enter more of the legal implications for this. But from the journalism perspective, the thing that's really interesting about these petitions is how you can start having effectively this dynamic HTML-based NFT that can be designed and oriented for whoever that user is, as well as what information comes into it. You can imagine like a New York Times NFT that is your paper and is updated every day in the ways that you might want it to be from the New York Times, but also organized in the ways that you might choose. Like all of this being, there's no platform for it. It's just what sits in your wallet is that NFT that then can be managed in that way. And so one of the things that we're talking about doing, we have a bunch of us that are going to play with the first version of this that might give you some sense of where it's going. My friend Rory, who's runs engineering at Alexandria Labs, is a Web3 publishing house focused on books. It was my birthday this last weekend, and she created a signature economies birthday card, right? And so all these folks from Kernel and LexDAO and all these other things, like they signed the card, right? And then this was all on chain effectively. And so it immediately made me think of Kyle's thing. So I think before we get to the petition thing, we're actually going to create a birthday card DApp that allows folks to create communities of care around whoever is the recipient and like connect those relations to it and have it'll just be like an interesting tool starting to play with decentralized media. So this petition thing is on the front edge, I think, of starting to play with really different dynamics as to how you can use NFTs and incorporate people participating in the changing and reading and editing and writing to those NFTs in various ways. And so the first version will be just like you sign it and your signature shows up on the document, which is actually in the NFT, not on some other website or what have you, which is how like signature economies initially worked. So and Kyle, I think, is one of the smartest legal engineers / builders out there, and he's just brilliant. And so I think this will be the first wave of a whole bunch of different things that can have lots of different media implications. But so it's fun that it's also part of this Lobby 3 funding thing. Like that'll be another first use case of it, and hopefully the holochain ZK stuff will allow this all to work out so that you actually know folks are in California or wherever it is and can actually do the lobbying once you verify where they're from.
Quick question: when you said that the HTML is in the NFT, and then if it was like a newspaper, so would your wallet then be the point of reading that content, or would you need a DApp to read the content?
It could just be the wallet. I can send you. He did a little write-up thing where we signed, we minted and signed and effectively updated, so you can look on OpenSea and you can see the signatures showing up on the image itself. Is essentially an SVG that is connected to the HTML piece. And so like lots of things still TBD in terms of how this can be used, but I think as an initial primitive, and then as these initial use cases of signatures as being the kind of, whether they're on a birthday card or they're on a petition, I think are kind of really interesting starting points. And then the idea, like from my meme perspective, it's how does every piece of media has a social graph associated with it, right? Of who has helped create it or read it or do whatever those things are. Can you start encoding all of that in a shared state? And what can you do with all those things? Then it's really yeah, it opens up a lot of different ways of playing with media. And I think, you know, some of the collaborative journalism stuff we talked about, I think this is a really, really cool. Like it's not quite there yet, but I think it's the starting point of something I haven't seen yet, which is, you know, really, really interesting.
That'd be awesome, because that eliminates half the conversations we have about where are we going to publish this thing. It's just in an NFT in the wallet, and then you just update that NFT with fresh content. Then there's your publication. You don't even need a protocol. That's cool.
And I think starting to publish across, like we're getting people used to publish even in the near term to lots of different channels, and starting to be able to aggregate the marks made and the replies and feedback into, you know, hey, this is all, it's just humans commenting on the same pieces of media. How do we associate these things? I think this is how we're starting to kind of go down those roads. So yeah, it's early stage, but yeah, I'd love to at some point could start demoing for you guys some of what these things can look like and how to tie them together, and think about what tools are useful to plug that into, right? So you can say, like, oh, we want to publish on Paragraph together. How do we have this all running off of how our DAO works, right? So that, you know, every piece that you plug in, you can start playing with and making it work however you want, and know that it's going to respect your data, your graph, you know, your roles in the way that it's set up as a community. So I think JournoDAO is really this is on the edges of, like, at least the people who want to do that work on the content side. There's lots of like players that are playing with that's like thinking about decentralized media, but it's on the tooling side, right? So I think a lot of this is like, how do we start marrying this up? And so, you know, and that'll be largely like, what are the tools that you want to work in what ways, and then how do we help start building those? And that can all be open source and extendable, and like that'll be the piece that's really exciting, is that like we don't have to keep these in little silos. Everything can talk to each other. People can start templating these out in various ways that are replicable for other organizations, or they can take it and move it in different directions. Like it's really changing a model from like corporate authority based tools that build tools in whatever way and then try to sell them to communities, to like community built tools that then can be accessible in lots of ways, and, you know, forkable and extendable. So I think that's what is starting to move.
Yeah, and then we could not stop, but we wouldn't have to focus on building the publication protocol. Really, you'd just be focusing on making a reader app at that point, or a app that allows the person to customize how they want their information to come to them based on the NFTs that are in their wallet that have that code in them. That's cool.
Yeah, like I mean, trying to get to this platformless state where like we're not stuck in these places, like even in Discord, right? Like, oh, like the Discord server is so limited in terms of what affordances you can have and what tools you can have, and then how do you communicate across these other pieces, right? So yeah, I think those are some of the, and this is where this common sense maker folks. Have we talked about Stigmergy before? I think Stigmergy is this like fascinating thing. So Stigmergy is it's ants, right? So like when you think about coordination behavior and you look at the natural world, like you look at bird flocks and things like that. But what's really interesting about ants is that they have writing effectively in the form of pheromones. And so the way that works, if you want to like, you know, ants are making their own decisions effectively, but that as they find things that are valuable to their community, they leave these little stigmergic markers in the form of pheromones and say, oh, there's some jam over here. And then the following ants can make their choices accordingly. And so the way that we've been thinking design-wise is like, you don't want to build like a funnel, which is how a lot of tools are built, which is it's for the benefit of the tool builder, right? It's trying to get the user to go where the tool builder wants them to go. You don't want to build like a tube. And so a lot of DAOs are kind of built this way, or DAO tools are built this way, where like the answer is a DAO. And so it doesn't matter what the question is, the answer is a DAO. And it looks like a corporation, but with tokens instead of equity kind of stuff. And so the idea is like, how do you build for a space where there's lots of different patterns that can emerge, and those patterns can then be stigmergic markers for those that follow, of like, oh, you're doing a restaurant thing. Here's what has worked for restaurants, or what different templates might emerge from that. And especially if you think about agreements as being kind of the future of the web, and the same, like think about websites in 93, 94, agreements are that for Web3, right? Now we're on the data and the value pipes. And like, we don't want to start like, what is a website going to be? Like, it's really hard to imagine what are all the ways that humans agree, and what are the ways that we already are doing this digitally, but through, company authority and in all these ways, and centralized authority. So we don't want to limit those ways of being. And so I don't know exactly what some of those patterns will be, but as we go and work, this is part of what's really interesting about these common sense maker folks, is they're thinking along the same lines, but thinking about how do the different marks you make in different platforms, how do you start having that recognized across wherever you are, that a like on Twitter versus a like on Mastodon versus a like on Farcaster. Can we read those all as likes, and can we read all of those individuals as participants in a same ecosystem that isn't confined to a platform? And that could be another way into some of this. Like, you don't have to care about where that is. You want people to consume it where they might want to in whatever way, and you can still kind of read those marks in the meaning that the community cares for. We're like, oh, these mean votes when people do this in this way. It doesn't matter where they do it, right? So I think that's part of where we're going. Yeah.
Where do I go to learn more about this?
Well, we're just releasing our SDK, and I'm happy to share a lot more of this with you guys. I would love your feedback.
No, I mean, if this is the place right here to learn more about it, that's fine. I just didn't know if there's
so Meme is, so my company is Meme, right? And so what we're doing is creating this agreement SDK, and this agreement part for communities to own, deploy, manage their own smart contracts, right? And then we're integrating with an ecosystem of folks that then sorry, these dogs are going crazy. And so from there you can start I think one of the things we can do now, this SDK is live now, and so we're starting to work more with tool builders of what are some of the first use cases for multiplayer tools that we can show how these things blend. So Chorus is one of the first ones we're starting with, and so we're building that and making it extendable. So Chorus was this open source 200-line code thing, but now how do you let any community publish together in whatever way they want? And then we're giving that to the Stigflow, the common sense maker folks, where they're going to start not just in Discord, they're going to have a Slack bot, and they're going to build those things, but those are all extendable, so they can just build off of the same framework, and any community can just pick it up and run with these things. And so we're then also integrated deeply with guilds, so that how do we then go to guild and say, hey, anybody who has a guild, so if you guys set up a guild, how do you instantly be able to sync those roles into your own contract and then use those for your multi-sig on safe, Zodiac? How do you use that for Paragraph? How do you and how do you start building tools that respect, whatever rules you build, right? So that's we're starting to try to just create the interoperable, composable thing. It's so stupid right now. We're literally all these tool builders, we're all raising money from VCs on our own in this way, trying to have our own proof points and whatever else. And the main things, by connecting all this stuff, that's the actual, it's this whole group interoperating to build anything you want as a community is the kind of pitch. But because it's decentralized, because the way that we're funding these things for VC and otherwise, it's just a massive headache. So we're trying to create more of that layer of connectivity that we're trying to in some ways make ourselves as small as possible so that we work with everybody in the ecosystem. So if you want to use HATS protocol for defining a role that then shows up in your Discord that's managed by Guild and then helps you publish out to your shared Twitter account, great, all those pieces work. Why shouldn't those things work together? They're all managed by that same community. So it's kind of multiplayer internet, right? Without requiring an authority to allow that to happen, that then distorts your behavior, extracts value from lock-in, does all that shit. So that's the idea. Yeah.
Let's set up a call or a demo or however you would want to do it.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things there is just how, because we can start it, we're earlier in these things, so I can walk you through all the stuff that's live. One of the things I think might be really interesting is depending on what those tools, what are the areas that are most exciting for you guys. So something I can bring you this, and we'll have this this Chorus version thing out in a week or two, right? And that's something I can just bring you guys. You can start using that in these channels. How do you want to tweet out from JournoDAO, and who on this team gets to propose and who gets to vote, and how many votes do you need through a threshold? Are there vetoes? Are there super votes from different people in the organization that can do whatever you want? And that's where you can start changing that to be whatever the organization wants it to be in terms of how you want to do that. So that would be kind of a V1 that I'd love to, once we have that, then it's also a great example where here's the extension, but like all that code is yours, right? So it's like, how do you want to do something else with that? Like you can start actually just opening the thing up and changing, oh, I don't want this, I want that, or I want someone to build this piece. And like that's where it gets really interesting, right? Is how do we start? So I think that would be a great place to start with you. So once we have that, I'd love to bring that there. And then the other piece is like, with like Colin at Paragraph or some of these like, oh, how do we start? Like, what are the tools that you guys are already using? And Unlock is a little tricky just because they have their own kind of tokenomics that like we will have to figure out how to incorporate. That's not quite as open in terms of how we think about some of this stuff. But I think that would be one thing we could think about. Oh, how for JournoDAO do we integrate with Unlock so that this piece works? But once the things are on chain, we can use those to translate anything we want, right? So that all works great. And then same thing can be true as you start being able to use the abstraction tools. So I think that's where this goes bananas, honestly, is that like when no one has to know that it's Web3, that you can show up, and if your community wants to recognize, oh, that's the Twitter account or that's the email, and they don't need to know that they're the way that those votes are working or whatever else is necessarily, oh, I need my wallet to do that thing. Like eventually, hopefully folks can take more control over the things, but it's still under their custody, right? It's just that it's using some of these private key sharding solutions, whether it's Lit or Magic Link or some of these other to be able to manage it without onboarding. So that's the stuff where then like, I think it's way more interesting where who are all the journalists that want to do indie journalism or community journalism or whatever that looks like. And the Web3 piece is just, it's like AWS. Like it's cool that this is like, in the broader story, like it means that we don't need permission anywhere along this stack to do the things we want to do, and aren't having our tools shaped by third parties that have other interests that aren't aligned with us. But it's not required for anybody to know or care. They can be pulled in because they want to do something together. So yeah.
And let me know if you need access to the Unlock team. I communicate with them daily. So if you want to talk with their dev row or
I haven't
with the
talked to Patrick
founder.
in a while. I should pick that back up now that we have something live. So I've chatted with Patrick a number of times and know him from Kernel, so I should connect. But I actually have never met Julian, so I should definitely.
Julian's really nice. He's open to any way you want to use his tech.
I should absolutely do it.
Yeah.
So I will.
Just let me know. I'll link you guys up. So.
Perfect. That'd be awesome. I would love that. Then we can at least start thinking about how those pieces plug in, because it's been a while since I've played with their stuff. So very cool.
Awesome. I've got to log off and get to the next thing.
Well, it's great seeing you all, and excited
really
for the
inspiring
next wave of stuff. So
Did you have something else, John?
This might be something to think about, but I've just been thinking about if Web3 journalism, decentralized journalism, the stuff that we're kind of gearing for or pushing towards, if it were to start to take off, and we actually had journalists outside of the sphere start to get interested in and learn, I wonder if there might be a point where it could be really valuable to have some sort of grading, I guess, of different journalism tools, because when you start getting into tools and like some are centralized, some aren't, some are open source, so like you get into all these layers where there could be problems. You can imagine most journalists are not going to have the slightest clue of what is safe, what is actually doing what they say it's doing, and how to even determine that. And so one thing that I've been kind of thinking that JournoDAO, or a sub aspect of JournoDAO, could be is teaming up or considering that, figuring out and trying to do some of that work that journalists will not be able to do, and being able to say, like, here is a tool that at least we have audited to the best of our knowledge, and how that process is a whole other discussion, but something to say, like, this looks pretty good, this seems relatively safe, this is doing what it's saying it's doing, because I just know when you're talking about crypto, every next token is so different, wildly different, and I just know that there will be a lot of people that will have no ability to distinguish between this protocol and this protocol, this tool, and like, good use cases and good techniques and tactics and in the sphere. It seems like something that could be an overarching benefit to the whole community in a lot of ways. And there's probably some stuff like that already, maybe. If not, there should be for DAOs, I would hope, or something like that. But it's something that I've just been thinking, like, if we were to push this stuff and then people actually start wanting to use it, the last thing I would want us to do would be push bad stuff that for whatever reason is, you know, collapses or whatever, it's hacked or blah, blah, blah. So, you know, if we're going to be in a position, I just think we're going to, whether we want it to be or not, we're going to be in a position of advisors, and people are probably going to look to this group if it's successful, of like, what do we use? Because a lot of people won't be able to make that choice on their own at all.
John,
Something
I'm
to
in
think
violent
about.
agreement with that, like violent agreement.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly curating those tools can be, and like JournoDAO as a shelling point for, you know, community and independent journalists. I think that's exactly the ways to start.
You two guys, John and Glenn, do you have, 'cause I started a document actually like along these lines like a couple weeks ago, and it's in the Notion. You guys, I don't think you do, Glenn.
I might have it. I didn't, you know, it's one of those
and
things that I forget exists.
I conceptualized it a little bit differently, but it was like a list. I had a list of like basically like a reporting stack, like a decentralized reporting stack, with like several, actually like too many layers of like each processy that goes into producing a piece of journalism. And like one column was the Web2 traditional tools, and then the next column is the potential Web3 tools. So that I started that over the holidays. So yeah, that's exactly what I think kind of the next step is to populate that list and then start to test and audit those tools, figure out what exists, what's best, and what needs to be built.
And
I'm kind of a nerd that way. Yeah, I'm definitely a nerd that way. I read the terms of service and I research the people that build this shit. So I also have my hackers that if I'm in question, I'm like, dude, is this going to hack me? And they're like, yeah, don't touch it. So that will be part of the vetting process just from my end. And then, yeah, but yeah, you're exactly right. It definitely needs to
There's
be a thing.
value there.
To take that one more step though, so like this is like, that's kind of where we're at right now, is kind of at, unfortunately at this point where like you can have a Excel list of, oh, these are the tools to use and what have you. I think where this gets way more interesting is once you here's your contract as JournoDAO, and what are the tools that are actually integrated with, and what are those templates, and anybody can take JournoDAO and, you know, oh, this is the JournoDAO stack, and go and use it. Or you can start actually building your own tools or extensions that, like, if it, say there's a way of like, what is the logic for how the flow of someone proposing an idea, of it being reviewed by a board saying like, oh yes, let's allocate something to do a little bit more here. What is an editorial role that then does a revise and resubmit, or whatever the things, like what are the ways that that can be shaped, and what are those different options for how that actually goes through, and like those kind of models and templates, and like that's the kind of patterns that like I want to be entirely opinionless on, to allow folks that like know when those, oh, this is the JournoDAO opinion as to what these things are, and here are some different options that work in different use cases, and like, oh, for local journalism, here's how these, like, and I think those are exactly the things that JournoDAO could be, the point where those things are held or forked, are, you know, are able to kind of be the core voices on some of those things. So I love that. I can't wait to dig in. That's freaking phenomenal. You really start going.
But I put the link to that Notion page in the chat, and let
okay,
me know.
I'm gonna need access to it. So, but I have the link at least. And if you want to
Okay.
give access to this,
Drop your email in there, Glenn.
Because yeah, we've been thinking about many of the same things in like a very like even this publishing to chorus kind of thing. What are the different, who can participate in what, in a tweet going out from an organization is like the most basic form of a post going through this process. But how does that change for, you know, different media forms, for different, you know, quality thresholds, so on? I think is really interesting. So,
And one thing too that I'm trying to be more mindful of is, you know, some of the stuff that the bots and whatever that we put in our Discord, since we're a journalism organization, we got to make sure there's no tracking on them. You know, the onboarding, stuff like that, like there is tracking and all that stuff. So we just need to know that what's being kept, why it's being kept. Doesn't need to even be in our server. So I think we have a different type of qualifiers for some of the stuff we use, because journalists.
Yeah, which also
Yeah, no,
reminds me, there's a
totally.
whole other
And I'm
group.
paranoid.
I'd love to
You should
connect
be.
you
No.
guys at some point to the Yeet. Have I told you about the Yeet organization? That is like it's a privacy policy focused group that and largely there's a whole bunch of different folks in there that are focused on privacy, and like there's Blue Sky folks, and there's I think the disco gals, and like Holmes Wilson is in there, who's building like a serverless Slack Discord competitor. There's just a bunch of thinking in there, and it's another organization that I think would have a lot of like, this is in my mind are some of the early use cases for the privacy issues. Same thing with like sex workers and weed and shrooms and some of the other things. I think those will be early use cases for why much you want these decentralized identities to be dissociated in various ways, and not thinking about owning identity in quite the same way that I think has been pitched of late. So I think this is overlapping. You guys also from that perspective within JournoDAO, I think like that reason for privacy being a priority and being something that can be vetted of especially for endangered folks in various ways is a really good focal point, because there's only so many voices that are actually giving to that are not the ones that are just going for max transparency on all the things and like, let's not worry about it. And there's lots of people that should really worry about it. So I think
What was the name of that group you were talking about?
It's called Yeet. It's a here, I'll find the thing. It's a little bit of like this private group thing. It was so Howard Tam he's now at Lit Protocol, and Anastasia Uglova, who's like a privacy researcher, who I think she's now at the Lighthouse, the metaverse search company. But they set it up originally when I was with them in Kernel, and so I'd been hacking on some of that stuff, and now it's taken on a more of a life of, there's regular firesides, for instance. And so that could even be an interesting way to introduce folks to JournoDAO, is we could set up a fireside to talk about privacy considerations for journalists. That might be a really good way to just like bring you in, you get to meet a bunch of these folks that are interested. Here's a use case we can talk about. And you'd have a lot of questions more from the technologist side, but then it would be more honing, what do our tools need to do? What are the things that we think about in this case that are pertinent to journalists? So that might be a really fun thing to do. I'll post that in there too and see if folks are interested in a fireside, and then we can connect that up too. That would be a good thing.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Eric, you gotta go, don't you?
I gotta go.
You're the keeper of the Zoom.
Okay.
It was great to see you all. We'll talk soon. See you.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. It was great seeing you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.